And welcome back, everybody, to Edric, Poon and Company, the podcast where anybody can inspire everybody. I'm Edric, your host, and this week we've got Michael Waitze, the founder of Michael Waitze Media. He hosts and produces numerous podcasts, such as Asia Insurtech Podcast, AsiaTechPodcast.com show, eCommerce Undercover, Thai Game Changer podcast, and the most recent one is the Wolfcast. I'm sure that there are some more. Michael's Productions has listeners in over 137 countries, totaling over 700 episodes that, of course, helped to hone his craft and to be where he is today in terms of podcasting. So I've invited Michael to come on, and he's so graciously come to share a lot more in terms of how he got to where he is, his podcasting journey, and also developing the art of conversation. So without further ado, I'd love to be able to say, well, put your hands together for Michael Waitze, but, you know, YouTube is what it is. So, hey, Michael, how are you, man?
I can hear the crowd roaring in the background for you.
Yeah, you know, if you had a concussion, but...
How are you doing, Edric?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, again, thanks so much. Now, just a quick backstory, right? We were supposed to do this on Wednesday, and I had this extremely terrible technological failure, okay? For the EPIC podcast, we had an epic fail. Was one of the, it was one of those days, right? Whereby your t-shirt was on backwards, your underwear had 3 or 4 holes, you know, just nothing was working the way it was supposed to. But today, thank goodness, thank the universe, and thank whatever higher powers that you believe in. And of course, thank you for coming on to this show. So you have such a huge repertoire, all right, of podcasts at this point in time. And it's so weird, right, that your background was actually so much working for Goldman Sachs, Citi, Morgan Stanley, and all these other guys, right? How the hell did you end up just getting into podcasting after all of that?
So it's a long story, but media is something that's always been super interesting to me. And as you know, media has power. And I think most of media today gets used for negative power, and I'd like to infuse it with a little bit of positive power and just inform people about what's going on out here. But I remember very clearly when I was a little boy, if I was at a party and there was a video camera there and a microphone, I always grabbed the mic. And I was the guy at the party who always was interviewing the other party guests. I don't know where it came from. Nobody in my family's in the media. Nobody's ever even tried. Well, that's not fair. My brother was in a couple of movies as an extra. Really? Yeah, but just when he was in between his undergrad and grad school, he went out to California. He's a very, very handsome dude and was just hanging around in Hollywood and got a couple of parts as an extra in a couple of movies. So fair enough. But if you fast forward, and I've always followed the technology around media, as you know, creating media has always been very expensive, requiring billions of dollars of sort of infrastructure spending just to be able to get it out there. And I've been paying attention, and I believe it was Rob Glazer who started a company called Real Player. He was a Microsoft developer, I believe, and he was trying to convince Microsoft to get into the the streaming business. But back then, you know, modems were 54K modems, and Real Player played real slowly. But when I saw it, I had this epiphany. And that epiphany was that if this works and if bandwidth improves, then anybody can have their own TV station, because that's what it felt like back then. You didn't really consider like getting your own radio station because everything seemed to be moving towards video even back then. But bandwidth wasn't big enough. So I just kept paying attention and paying attention. When the technology caught up to my vision, I had to pounce. I had to. And a few other things came together, actually. When I was a limited partner in Ardent Capital, and I actually watched the formation and the genesis of a company called eCommerce.
Yep.
So the brothers and the team that built that business are not just prolific business builders, but some of the most incredible business builders in Southeast Asia. And when we went to, you know, metaphorically to Silicon Valley to tell them, you should invest in a business that's already been built in the United States, e-commerce facilitation. It doesn't exist in Southeast Asia. There are 670 million people. And with all the statistics we could give them about how digital businesses were growing, they still weren't interested. And the reason why was because they said we don't have enough visibility, they said, on what's happening in Asia in general. We definitely don't have enough visibility on what's happening in Southeast Asia in particular.
Hmm.
And that's a market gap. So I wanted to fill that gap. So that was sort of the genesis of this whole idea. It's had a few iterations, but that's how it started, really.
Very, very interesting. And you decided to also kind of leverage on the whole passion to interview, to be with people. At the end of the day, you know, when you see all of this, do you prioritize more of the business content and the industry news, or do you just really enjoy talking to people?
So I think that, and remember, I don't do this for me, right? So it's, in a way, it's an interesting question. I think humans really can only make really visceral connections with other humans. And what I like to do, and I think it's a kind of a different methodology than other people use. First of all, I don't think I interview people. And I think I said that to you offline, right? I don't consider myself somebody who interviews people. I feel like I'm much more comfortable having a conversation, but I also believe that the world kind of revolves around storytelling. And if you're not telling a story, if you're just asking stock questions, right? Why did you found it? Why did you found this company? What's your cost of customer acquisition? What's your attraction? All these kind of garbage questions. Nobody listens and nobody learns. And the idea for me is to introduce people in the context of what they do, because then you get both parts of that story. Notice I didn't say both sides. You get both parts.